Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final day of the summit. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognize the continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So thank you, everyone who's joined us over the past week. I hope, and we all hope on behalf of all of our student committees and IChemE that you've gotten something out of it. We've tried to accommodate for all sort of interests. We've had well over 25 speakers, and I hope you've all had a fantastic event. Just a reminder that at 4:30 today, we'll be having a bit of a networking event. It runs for about an hour, and it's through an app called We Run the World. Sorry, let me confirm that for you. Yeah, Run the World. And basically what it is it matches you with everyone else who's registered for like a 5-minute one-to-one chat. And it's perfect for people like myself who are introverts and a bit shy because it cuts out all the anticipation about approaching someone. You don't need to deal with icebreakers or anything. It's only 5 minutes. You don't even really need to have an elevator pitch because I'm meaning this. If I can do it, I know you can too. All right, so let's start off. Today, our speakers who will be taking us through the tomorrow of chemical engineering, which is all of you guys listening. We're joined by Alexandra Meldrum and Tim Hosken. If both of you guys can open up your webcams now. Or whenever you're ready, that is. I'll introduce them both anyway. So Alexandra is a senior executive with 20 years of experience in industry, universities, and the government. She's the subject area lead for education, innovation, and research on the IChemE Learn Society Committee and leader of the IChemE Digitalisation Project. Alexandra, thanks for joining us. And Tim is currently a director and head distiller at the Sydney Rum Distillery. He holds a degree in chemical engineering from Curtin University in Western Australia, and he's now on the East Coast as an adjunct associate lecturer at the Uni of New South Wales. Thank you, Tim. And I believe Alexandra will be kicking us off to start.
Hello, it's Alexandra. Hopefully you can hear me.
You're all good, Alexandra.
Oh, that's super. Look, I won't turn on my camera because I'm having some difficulty with connections today. But look, hopefully the voice and being able to see the PowerPoints will work, and that'll be great. Look, I just want to say I've attended some of the sessions of this student summit this week, and I think you've all done an excellent job and pulled together something that is really exciting for people. And what I'm looking forward to talking about today is hopefully giving you a slightly different angle to what you might have expected in talking about the future. So look, let's go to the second slide, and I know someone's turning the slides for me. If we look at the second slide, you can see a little bit about me. I'm a chemical engineer, and you can see there's some of the things that I've been doing as a volunteer with IChemE. But look, let's go to the third slide. And when we go to the third slide, what I want to do is start the poll. So you've heard a little bit about me. I want to give everybody a chance who's on this call an opportunity to have a look at the questions. And there are a number of questions here. So I might go silent for a few seconds while people choose the options. You can tick as many as you like and press submit. So let's find out a little bit about the people who are on this call. So he's picking some things that tell us about you. Hopefully getting some good interaction as people have a look at that, have a think about how things are for them at this point in time and what they think about the future. So just give people another moment or so to finish those questions. There's 4 questions there. Press submit. So hopefully you're working your way through all 4 of those questions. And it'll be interesting to see what the results are when these come up. So do we think we've given everybody enough time? Let's have a look at the results. It'd be great to see the results. So you might close the poll now and give us a chance to have a look at the results. Now, the person who's driving the poll for us, you might like to tell us, how did it look? What were people saying? give you a moment to compile the results and share that with us. How did that go? What results did we get?
Right. Sorry, did you want me to go through the polls?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yep, let's share it with everyone.
Well, for the question, how do you feel looking out to the medium term next 6 months? Most folks feel pretty good, actually. They think it's tough, but we've got some optimists here, so they're pretty confident that it'll be okay.
Fantastic. And longer term?
In the longer term, also more optimists. They acknowledge that it is tough, but actually, that's quite nice. We've got most folks, about 48%. Yeah, they say they're pretty good. It's tough. They'll be okay. The next highest answer was actually, I'm excited about the future. So over half of
That's
us here
fantastic.
are feeling good.
Yeah, no, that's great. How about the immediate term? Because people sometimes can feel more positive about the future. How about the question, which was about how people are feeling now in the immediate term?
But yeah, overall, like, people are, even in the immediate term, people are still feeling good. And some folks are feeling quite interested and eager to learn more.
Fantastic. Thanks for doing that, and it's good to have people involved. Let's go to the next slide, and we're not going to have time to spend a lot on this, but I want you to think about why I'd begin a discussion about the future by getting people to do this poll and in effect think about where we are now. And I noticed some of you have found the chat and started putting little comments in. You might like to think about why we did begin with that poll as we go to the next slide. So the next slide talks about strategy. And strategy is just really, so I've been teaching strategy for many years. Strategy is really just saying, where are we now? And what are the possible futures that we might want to attain, that we might want to consider? And what are the possible routes for how we might get there? So I hope that it's making it clear as to why, when we're looking at our own personal strategies, it's often quite important to understand where we are starting now. Let's go to the next slide, a little bit more about you. So a little bit more about me. I've mentioned that it was important to think about your stories and where you're beginning from and where you're placed now. Probably 2 points I want to draw out of my history that's in front of you there. One is to say that these times that you're currently in might seem reasonably difficult, reasonably tough, a time of transition. It was quite interesting because when I was at university and getting close to finishing, it was 25 years ago, which you might often hear was the last time that it was a fairly challenging time, not just for engineers, but for a lot of the economy. And many of the students had faced a similar environment in some respects to what you're facing now, thinking about whether they will or they won't get a job. You can see 25 years onwards, I've done a number of different things. And in many ways, it's been the transferable skills that have enabled me to carry things across from one area to the other. I did put a little bit of information in there about my 3 years working in government. I've just spent the last 3 years there. People often say you've got options in working in industry, and they forget that there are options for working in government as well. You can see I've had some super exciting projects and things that I've been part of. Let's go to the next slide. Because when I think about strategy, you often find an organisation might think about what is their mission or what is their purpose. And I think for you, thinking about your own personal strategies going into the future, it's really important to be thinking about what it is that matters to you. So why is it important? And it was interesting talking to the organisers before I prepared my speech for today. They said, look, we liked what you said in your particular statement where you spoke about the global grand challenges. And look, this gives you an idea as to why chemical engineering has been important for me. The idea that we take that central role, the idea that the things that really matter to us as a society, and I know you've spoken about all of these topics over the last 4 days, the fact that we as chemical engineers really take a central role. We don't take the only role. We're often working in multidisciplinary approaches with people from many other areas. But to me, that's exciting, that for the stuff that really does matter as chemical engineers, we're part of that. Let's go to the next slide. And look, if we talk about strategy, let's begin with the why, so the purpose. And once again, if you want to, you might want to type some ideas into the chat. But obviously, you're part of this conversation because you're a chemical engineer, you think chemical engineering is important. I'd encourage you to be thinking about why it is that chemical engineering is important, but for you, in your own words, what it is that matters for you. Some of you might want to put some comments into the chat, but others might just want to reflect on that and to think about it as we go to the next slide. So I've taught strategy for many years, and we could go into this in a lot of detail, but let's just look at it in a really simple sense. The most important thing about strategy is that we think about why we're doing it, what it is that we're actually doing, so what the current state might be and also what we want the future state to be, and then some kind of process for how we're going to get there. Now, obviously, in a short discussion like this, I'm just going to cover things fairly quickly, but as we look to the future, I find that the approach about strategy is quite helpful. So if we look at the next slide about what, we're looking at step 2. And with step 2, we're having a think about what matters. And I would really hope that you're all starting to develop some ideas that might change quite a lot during the courses of your lives and your careers, but you're starting to think about what it is that will help you to deliver on that why. So we spoke about why this is important to you, and now I'm encouraging you to think, well, what does that actually mean? Like, what would that look like? For example, I care about the environment and I care about climate change, and therefore the things that I want to see would be the type of way you might approach this. So look, I've prefaced it by talking about the why and the what. Let's have a look at some of the things that are talking to us about future trends. So during the pandemic, what's happening? We know we're in a global crisis. The health impacts came first. We certainly saw the impacts on the economy come very soon after that. And we're now starting to see the society and the geopolitical changes. We could talk about that in a huge lot of detail, but look, from my work, we're looking across a lot of themes as to what is happening now and what might happen in the future. I think really they can be bundled into 2 general ideas. Now, my 2 general ideas that I want to put forward here are that to some degree, the trends that were happening anyway are now, to some extent, happening faster. And I'll mention later about digitalisation, but certainly that's one area where we're finding that things are being adopted. But it's not necessarily an unexpected trend. It was something that was happening already, but it's now happening faster. And we've then got these new things, which really are just new events. I mean, whoever thought that they would happen? You might want to call them a black swan or call them something else, but we've certainly got all these new events that are happening, whether they're in the unexpected changes, and they can be positive or negative, but unexpected changes in health. Certainly we all know about jobs. Figures came out yesterday about 7.4, but I don't think anyone believes that's anywhere near describing the reality of what's happening in the unemployment. With businesses, we know we're in a really surreal world at this point in time, where to some degree there are a lot of zombie businesses continuing to operate. And we're seeing that we're just seeing a huge change in also how businesses decide to run their business models. That's also exciting to some degree because we're seeing new things and new stuff that is happening as people approach the current situation with new ideas. Let's look at the next slide. So we've got this idea that some of the current trends are just continuing but might be fast forwarding. And then we've got the idea that there's some new stuff as well. So the question is, how do you find out about that stuff that interests you? And I began by getting you to think about what stuff actually matters to you or where your current state is personally, because that's your frame of reference for looking at things. And when we have a look at stuff going into the future, there's too much stuff to read, isn't there? I mean, if I tell you that I read as many different newspapers as I can find and a range of business magazines and a lot of specialist stuff, you might be saying, yeah, I can't do that. And that'd be right, because that might not be right for you. I like to read broadly and I like to think broadly. Some of you might like to look at stuff deeply and to look into things in a technical area that's interested to you. So part of my tip here is to say, look, given the lens of what you're interested in, have a look and see what people are saying about stuff. But look at some of the reports from the last 3 years, because they're not rubbish. They're not rubbish yet, you know. Some of the trends that people were talking about will still be useful to you now. But also be alert to new stuff. Let's go and have a look at the next slide. I don't know that I could talk about an engineering presentation or an economics presentation without giving you at least one equation. So here it is. Look, the economy is a huge deal at the present. I've given you two headings there, economy and job. But look, basically, it is part of the context, and it is part of the important context that will influence your decision and influence businesses and government. And it's sometimes interesting to kind of understand when people are saying the economy is growing or falling, what are they talking about? They're talking about this thing called GDP. And with GDP, we can get the economic growth when we have people spending more. So that's you and I, that's households. We can see huge changes in investment by businesses, and we're definitely seeing that. Government spending is changing. There is a trend at this point in time for government to be making a lot of expenditure decisions. So the government is getting more involved. And certainly there's been some radical changes around exports. So when we talk about economic growth, or they talk about, oh, we're in a recession, they tend to be discussing both whether the economy has a lot of this stuff happening and also what's happening with jobs. And I think you guys are probably living and breathing jobs, some of you at the moment, because you might be looking for work, or you might have found that you've been impacted. So it's giving you both opportunities and challenges. And it's not just the jobs that are changing, it's which industries or which type of business is employing. You know, not every business is doing badly. Some of the tech industry is doing so well at the moment. So there's opportunities and there's challenges. You might be interested to know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the areas that are actually still hiring at the moment include health, software and IT, finance, project management, and government. So really interesting there. And if we have a look here, and I've given you a web link, so you can go and look this up yourself. But if you're interested in economics, there's a really great snapshot tool, and you can go and have a look at stuff, and you can see, oh, which areas are growing and what's happening in different things. People are sometimes surprised to hear that manufacturing is only 6% of the economy. So what else is happening? Where else are the other opportunities and the other jobs? Let's go to the next slide. The next slide, I want to relate back to my own experience a little bit, because, you know, actually, that'll be the next slide. This is just showing how the structure, and we talk about the structure of the Australian economy and the different industries, and things have really changed quite a lot over the last 100 years. And, you know, if I was to look at any other developed economy, it'd look reasonably similar to that as well. But I want to hone in on the last 25 years, so let's go to the next slide. And this is the slide that I think gives you an idea. And as I said, look at current trends and fast forward them. It gives you an idea about the future as well. And I find it pretty fascinating to think that in just 25 years, and look, most of you on this call have been around for at least a fair big portion of that 25 years. And you can see that manufacturing has gone from 14% of our GDP down to 6%. And what has grown? You know, we've seen areas such as construction being pretty strong, areas such as mining being pretty strong, areas such as services being pretty strong. So, you know, I want to give you to some degree some ideas and some hope as you look to the future. You know, I mentioned that we were in recession at the time that I was leaving uni. And I mentioned that many of my friends struggled to get work. And it was interesting because probably about 6 months out, probably only half of us had work in engineering. And that wasn't necessarily such a bad thing, you know. Over time, people found they picked up those valuable transferable skills by working in other areas. And look, sometimes what we always thought as our first choice, when we went to choice B or choice C or choice D, people found that it wasn't so bad after all. And so having that broader exposure was not such a bad thing. So look, it's useful in times like this to be prepared to think broadly. And I think to some degree to look at how those trends are fairly solid, just even in a short period of time over 25 years. Let's go to the next slide. What I'm going to do in these 3 slides is give you some ideas about what is growing into the future. And look, clearly a lot of people talk about this kind of stuff. So you can read about the World Economic Forum. You can read think tanks such as the Grattan Institute. You can read the stuff that comes out from CRCs or growth centres such as the Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre. It's all good stuff. I can't talk about all of it. So given my experience, I've decided to point out to you some of the areas where government is identifying opportunities and trying to stimulate those parts of the economy, because it gives you an idea about where there might be some growth and some stuff happening. Let's begin with productivity. That's been kind of my baby for a while. So how do we get a more productive economy and get more out of what it is that we've got? And you see these same themes coming back again and again, whether it's from Australian reports or whether it's from the reports that are done by the productivity commissions in the States. And you'd see in many of those areas, chemical engineers have an enormous opportunity to make a difference. Look over on the right, innovation. Once again, the kinds of ideas where government is saying these are the things where we need to get it, we need to stimulate the economy. These are the opportunities for the future. Once again, as you look at those kind of headings, talking about things like environmental goods and services, digital strategies, smart cities, again, these are things where chemical engineers can have an impact, and they're growth areas, they're opportunities the government wants to stimulate. Let's have a look at the next slide. So I spent a bit of time working in industry development, and I worked across many of these areas. Australia has some competitive advantages in these. And when you look at, there's just so much exciting stuff coming out from the federal or coming out from the states about all the ways that industry is responding with advanced manufacturing and the current challenges we've got, but the future challenges that we've got as well. I know that chemical engineers often talk about areas such as hydrogen or opportunities with clean energy. I've been fortunate to work on some fantastic projects around circular economy and around METS, mining equipment, technology and services. So, you know, we have world-leading research. We do some really exciting and important stuff around supply chains because we have to, because of where we are in Australia. So you might ask, why does the government get involved in industry development? And it's because these areas are seen as areas that are opportunities. They're things that Australia is good at. They're things that we want to stimulate. And look, often in the case of the government getting involved, it's because there's seen to be a market failure. So with a little bit of stimulation, be it grants, be it promotion, we see that there's an opportunity to promote those areas. I like reading the stuff from CSIRO. To be honest, you can spend ages looking at the exciting opportunities. So they're the scientific research agency. You can read about where they see the future opportunities are. Once again, really good, exciting stuff that chemical engineers could be involved in. Let's go to the next slide. There's also a chief scientist. And by the way, there are chief scientists and engineers in the States as well. And if you have a look at the chief scientist, you'll see the sort of things that they're focusing on. And once again, you see themes such as energy and energy storage, artificial intelligence, these ideas where often chemical engineers can make a fantastic contribution. So, you know, there's some growth areas, there's some stuff happening. And look, only recently, they established what's called the National Skills Commission. And this is going to be really interesting to keep an eye on. And I think if you're looking for work or you're looking for more work or better work, it's beneficial to keep an eye on the National Skills Commission. They've produced their first report, a snapshot. You can go and have a look into that. You can see I've listed there the areas where they have seen a rapid increase in demand. And look, once again, many of these areas, health, transport, mining, manufacturing, agriculture, and the government, they are measuring a growth in Australia in demand since the COVID crisis. So I think we should all keep an eye on what the National Skills Commission produces, because that's going to be quite interesting to see what they come up, and that'll give us some pointers about the future. If you go and have a look at the next slide, I've just put their snapshot summary. And look, we know it's been a pretty tough time. And you can read some of the figures there, and it'd be remiss of me in a talk like this to say it's all positive. It's not. There's been some challenges. And so you can read the facts and the figures there. And if we go to the next slide, you can see that they provide some resources and support so that as you're looking for the future, the Skills Commission provides both the Job Outlook and the Job Hub, and you can use the web link there to go and have a look. I want to move on to talking about how we as chemical engineers, you might want to be involved in IChemE, and, you know, as a learned society, we're there as a group of people who bundle together and try and make a material impact, and in particular as chemical engineers on the global grand challenges. Let's use that to go on to the next slide, which is about the third step of strategy, the final step. And this is all about how. And if we go into the next slide, you can see I just want to give you some of my tips. This is based on my experience. But as you're looking to the future, I'd say one of the most important things to do, and I've heard other speakers say that this week, is to maintain your networks. I want to suggest something else, and I've hinted at this already. I want to suggest you read. And whilst you might read current stuff that you read on your devices, also find stuff that personally interests you and read more deeply. I don't think we read enough. So use the opportunities you can to read things that are of interest to you. And I suggest that as these times can be pretty exciting and also very challenging or very depressing as well, I'd suggest that seeking balance is the other thing we all need to do. And look, someone once said to me, look, think about it in three areas. You know, if you're looking at your week, are you doing something that's social and fun and keeps you connected? Are you making sure that at least something that you do is giving you a sense of achievement? And are you making sure you continue to grow and learn? So, you know, thinking about how you manage to do that kind of stuff and how you manage to not just look after yourself, but support others as well. You know, giving can often be something that you learn from as well, but also can make you feel good and can feel positive. So on our next slide, I bring it back to the poll that we had at the beginning. I got you to think about the short term, the medium term, and the longer term. And I think it's useful to think about all three, because sometimes you can become quite focused on sort of getting through the next day or getting through the next few weeks. And it's often quite useful to be able to keep a focus on all three. I was really interested to see people had responded to the poll saying they felt reasonably positive about the longer term. And look, sometimes that's the value about thinking about the longer term, is that it can take us out of the current state that we're in, and that can be really helpful. I've given some practical tasks there. They're nothing other than just my personal suggestions. But look, if you're looking for work now, or you're looking for part-time work, or you've lost work, don't stop applying. You know, to some degree, you need to keep on applying. Follow things that you find are interesting. So do be prepared to look outside of the square. Don't be afraid to talk to people. You know, ask others for ideas, maintain your networks. One thing that has become pretty big in recent years is this idea of a side hustle, and maybe we can all thank the barefooted investor for that. But people have started talking about how they've got a side hustle. They do some work, but then they've got a bit of fun on the side, something that they do, and it's low risk. You know, it doesn't matter if it fails because it's not costing them anything other than their own time. But a lot of people are trying something new. And an extension of that is to have a portfolio of work. So many people like me, you know, for many years I've been running a multitude of things all at the same time. And for me, that's exciting and that's invigorating to have a portfolio of work. And that's one way of getting yourself ready for the future. And then make sure you always pause for long enough to reflect on what you're learning, and to give yourself the opportunity that if your first industry you look at doesn't work, that you're ready to try another. We'll go to the next slide. And I wanted to just share with you some ideas that we're developing from the IChemE Digitalisation Project. It's an international project that I lead. And this is just an early view, and we're looking out to the future and we're saying, what are the skills that we think chemical engineers are going to need? And how will that apply to, over on the right, all these different subject areas that chemical engineers work in? And it's really great because as you develop those digital skills on the left, you're able to apply them across any of the areas on the right. So back to my theme again of the idea of of skills being transferable. And the area where I personally work is often in those things around the enablers. So really exciting things, thinking about how we make decisions responsibly and ethically. How we ensure we're building systems that enable us to do that, and to assist people to continually upskill, because we will have to continue to learn. And also thinking about how that changes our organisations and how we do innovation. So I share that with you. It's only an early view of the work that we're doing, but it might give you some ideas about the skills that are starting to be seen as being quite important for chemical engineers now and into the future. On the next slide, I'll give you some ideas about how you can get some tips from IChemE itself. So have a look at the website. One document I particularly like is called Chemical Engineering Matters. You can also browse through and have a look at what's called the SIGs, or special interest groups. Just gives you an idea as to where chemical engineers are working, what types of areas. And having a look at the member groups gives you an idea about how, there's people practicing chemical engineering all around the world, and that in itself is interesting. The next slide talks about how globally we're approaching some different areas that we think are really the most important areas for chemical engineers to be kind of focusing on through their institution for now and into the future. I mentioned the digitalisation one. That's the one I lead. But look, we've got a bunch of chemical engineers working on all the other projects as well. We'll be pulling people together from across the world to make this stuff happen. The reason for sharing this with you is so that you can be excited, and maybe you'll want to know more, and maybe you'll want to participate. But certainly these are areas that we think are really important for us as a learned society. On the next slide, I actually wanted to give you some tips about where to go, because the current times are really stressing a lot of people. And I just wanted to remind people that it's perfectly okay to talk to others, to get some personal support. I did ask some questions about that in the poll at the beginning, but I want to acknowledge the reality. And the reality is that it's not always great for everyone. And whether it's you or a friend, you don't have to soldier on alone, but you can certainly get confidential help by reaching out to any of those services if you kind of want to talk about how life, picking out what you want to do, thinking about a future career. If any of that stuff's kind of weighing on you, it can be useful to talk to others using some of those services. So look, here's my final slide. Summary, key points. I want to acknowledge the reality of feelings. We are human beings. Acknowledge that it's, as we look to the future, we certainly don't have all the answers. Anyone who says they do will be wrong. The opportunity to reflect. So seek out your own answer to why. You're not the same as everybody you studied with. We're all different. I've given you some ideas about developing your own future strategy, given you some ideas about some trends and what the government reports are picking as the trends and the areas of opportunities. And I suggest you keep your focus on those 3 time horizons. It can just be a healthy thing to do to keep self-balance and maintain your networks. So the next slide is really just the wrap up and say, thinking about the future, I did mention I feel it's valuable to reflect. I encourage you to think about any points that I've raised in the last half an hour. Are there some things that you've learnt that you want to remember? Are there some areas you want to go to get information? And is there something you want to do differently? If so, if I put on my teacher educator hat, I'd say write it down. If you write something down, you're more likely to commit to it. We know that for goal planning is better. So there's my final slide. Thank you. I've been delighted to have the opportunity to be one of your speakers. Congratulations on this summit. It's been super. And I certainly wish you all the best for your future careers. And I hope I've given you some really broad brush, big picture stuff and giving you an idea of how you might make that real for you. Thank you, and look, wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Alexandra. And I know so many of us here would have found this very insightful. Next up, we have Tim Hosken. For those who went with us at the start, he's currently a director and head distiller at the Sydney Rum Distillery and an associate lecturer at the University of New South Wales. Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Tim Hosken. I'm a chemical engineer, currently working in the food and beverage industry with a particular focus on distilled spirits. So currently head distiller of a company called Sydney Rum Distillery. I'm also a shareholder, and lucky enough at the moment to be an adjunct lecturer at the University of New South Wales, which is a role that I'm really, really enjoying. The first of all, I'd just like to say it's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you all today, and it was great to the insights just before from Alexandra. I'll follow up on some of those points, but it's really, really good advice and options as well. So that was very insightful for myself. I imagine it would have been guys listening today as well, which is great. Yeah, thanks for IChemE for having me on board and the student. Very much looking forward to having a bit of a chat today, focusing on tomorrow or chemical engineering, or the future may have in store for you guys and all of us. So I thought for my presentation, what I'd do would start by taking a bit of a journey of my career so far, kind of go through and share some insights of where I've been and kind of what I've done, and hopefully that can kind of help you guys think of some ideas that might work for your journey. And then we'll then touch on some kind of finishing thoughts on what we might see in the future of engineering and what some of the trends and changes might be. All right, so very early in my career, I was quite lucky to get the opportunity to work across the 3 key areas really of engineering. So managed to get the opportunity to understand what it was like and the different aspects of engineering, working in research engineering, design engineering, and also operations or manufacturing. So most people's careers, generally you'll focus on 1 or 2 of these. So you got a chance for me very early on to get a bit of a feel for all 3 industries. It was very, very insightful. And to be honest, to get an understanding of what actual engineering work entailed was very important for me. So to take a little step back, for me, I grew up in a small country town in Western Australia called Narrogin. So my parents weren't engineers, my mates weren't engineers. I didn't really have a good feel on what the job would entail and how it would work. When I went to university, I went to Curtin University. So once I was there and started networking and engaging with people, started to get a bit of a feel and understood, kind of what it might be like out there in the workforce. But to be honest, it wasn't until I actually got out there and started working, really got a good insight into what it was all about. So I thought it might be nice for you guys to share some of the insights. we can then see if that might be a little bit insightful for you guys on deciding on your potential future careers or what you may be looking into doing in the future. So my first role was a research role. So I managed to get an industrial traineeship with CSIRO, which was great. So that was in the hydrometallurgy department and focusing mainly on minerals extraction. And this initial job was looking at bio-heat leaching, so a way of extracting further minerals through microorganisms and things like that, which was pretty cool, exciting stuff. And then that actual research project led to me getting a part-time job there, which was great because I managed to do that part-time work in my final year of university study. And in terms of a research role, CSIRO, a fantastic place to work. Did all sorts of stuff, lab scale experiments, did some really cool pilot plant work. So really good experience across the board of kind of research, experimental process innovation, which is something I really, really enjoyed. From that, after I graduated my engineering degree at Curtin, I actually took a full-time role at a major engineering design firm in the mining and metals department. So the company was a full design house, right from feasibility studies to detailed engineering design and then commissioning on site. They pretty much did it all. So it's a great learning experience to be involved in such a big company early on. During my time there, I was mainly involved in the process engineering design side, which was great. You know, you get to see something from establishing the process design criteria to really getting stuck into some of the PFDs and the PNIDs, and then working and liaising with all the different kind of engineering departments. So the work you then have to do with the mechanical engineers and electrical guys, and even things like project control and all that was really good experience for me to get a feel for what you really needed to establish these kind of big projects and get them off the ground. Following that, I then managed to get my role in operations. And this is at a place in Boddington, Western Australia, at a company called Newmont. They've got a Boddington gold mine there, which is about a 38 million tonne per annum gold mine. Amazing site to work at. And it's really, really good to get some experience on site if you ever get the opportunity. It's basically, you know, where all the research work and all the design work actually gets to put together and actually get to see it applied in industry. So in that respect, I would encourage all of you guys to take any opportunity to go visit and gain work experience on as many sites as you can. If there's that opportunity to go see something, look at something, definitely jump at it and go do it. You'll always find it rewarding and interesting. So the role on site was very enjoyable. You know, generally as an area engineer, for most of you guys would know if you've experienced some back work and things like that at the moment. An area engineer or metallurgist, if you call it in the minerals industry, you're kind of responsible for the section of the plant. So day to day, you're offering technical support, you work with operations crews, making sure you're hitting targets. And you also have a lot of nice kind of process improvement things you're working at, some small amounts of lab work and R&D. So lots going on. And the gold mine in Boddington is actually a great facility. There's so much gear there and really interesting stuff as a chemical engineer you really like to learn and get familiar with. Great crushing circuits, flotation cells, leaching, elution and gold pouring. For the guys that like process control, there's a really, really good DCS department there. So for me as a young engineer to be on site with all those you know, interesting bits of gear and great people to learn and work with was really, really good. And I really enjoyed that experience. So as I mentioned, you know, these kind of three areas, I was quite lucky to get experience across the board quite early. And I will touch on, by the way, the reason why I left the design engineering role to move into operations, because when I left my career, and one thing that Alexandra touched on, you know, there's always cycles in what we do in engineering. There's always, you know, downturns and then booms as well. You'll find, especially in the minerals industry and the oil and gas industry. My design engineering role, I was there for a year. Things were going really, really well. Then all of a sudden there was a massive mining downturn once I left engineering. So working for a big design consultancy company, once obviously there's no more new projects, there's no more billable hours, there's no more work for you. So unfortunately I copped a redundancy very, very early in my career, which was quite tough at the time. But in hindsight, it was great because that got me thinking, and it made me connect with some people that I'd worked with previously, and then I got my role to work in operations, which was probably one of the most valuable learning experiences for me. So everyone, as you go through your careers, you'll you'll go through some cycles, and it's about being adaptable and kind of pushing forward and utilising those networks that you have to keep going on and following those focuses that and things that you want to achieve. But all right, let's get into the exciting stuff. So for me personally, on my journey in chemical engineering, this is where things get really interesting for my career. So ever since I was in high school, I was always fascinated with the kind of creativity of food and beverage production. I really love the kind of art and science that you've got to bring together to make amazing kind of products. So it was something I was always very much interested in. And this kind of interest is what led me into doing my chemical engineering degree to start with. So, I wanted to do this degree to help me learn the skills that would help me in this field. And in fact, when I was at Curtin University, I did a stream of Chem Eng called Biosystems Engineering, which I don't think is still running at the moment, which is a bit of a shame because it was great, and the skills I learned there are fantastic for what I'm doing in my current role, working in the food and beverage industry. But essentially it was a standard Chem Eng role, but you did a lot of kind of focus on bioprocessing. You got to do some electives around microbiology and those things, which was really, really good, especially and helpful for now in the work that I currently do. So always keen to crack in this industry, but when I was at uni, and I always knew that it's quite a hard industry to get into. Craft distilling, similar to craft brewing or beverage production, it's reasonably unique in Australia. So, and craft distilling in particular is very much in its infancy compared to other industries. Realistically, the craft industry for distilling is only about 25 to 28 years old. So, always knew it would be quite tough to get a role in there or crack that industry. But I knew from around the world the success that happened in the distilling industry for craft beverages in America and the UK, for example, was going really, really well. So it eventually hit Australia, and I always want to be prepared for it and try and find an opportunity where we could get something going here. So being open to that opportunity and always, trying to find if I could crack into what I was really, really keen to do for my career. Lucky enough for me, a really good mate of mine, a guy called Jim McEwen, his brother-in-law, Alistair, they also believed in this potential for the industry, and they set out to build Western Australia's first urban distillery, which is called Whipper Snapper Distillery. And that's some of the photos you're looking at currently now. So I was lucky enough to be involved from the very, very beginning in the startup and helping get the distillery off the ground. And then when production was up and running, I moved across from the minerals industry and to the world of distilling full time. So if you take a look at some of the photos here, you obviously notice on the right-hand side, you see half of the batch distillation unit. So obviously, Kevin, you guys would have all done a lot with distillation. This is a beautiful piece of copper gear. We used to make some fantastic whiskies and all sorts of great spirits. But I'd like to cut that photo short. That kit there is actually a bit bigger, but I had to make sure I made enough room for probably the most important thing of being a distillery, and that is that photo in the middle you're looking at there, which is the distillery dog. The distillery dog is always an important part of any distillery, and that's my dog there called Leo. He's actually sitting right here next to me at the moment, but he grew up in the distillery, and he's now come across to New South Wales, which is what I've done to follow kind of my career into my next distillation role. But so jump to the next slide. So before I moved over to New South Wales and entered into the role that I'm working at now for Sydney Rum Distillery, for me, in the back of the mind, knowing the distillery industry in Australia was always quite at its infancy, it was very important to obviously, continue that growth in education and learning. And as I mentioned, it was quite a small industry here and it was quite young, but around the world there was lots of established industries and lots of opportunities. So I always knew that would be important to get across overseas, meet people, learn from them, and try and bring some of those skills back. So some of the photos you see here, it was quite hard to pick kind of my favourites, but essentially it's just a handful of a snapshot of a few places that I've been to, but it's been quite great and important for obviously what we wanted to do with the original distillery at Whippersnapper, and obviously what I'm doing in my current role now. So I think just as a general theme, you can read as many research papers as you like, you can You can do them in Excel models, but I always believe that nothing is more important than physically, visiting someone and seeing the production, meeting people on purpose, meeting people in person, sorry, and you really get to learn so much more by doing that. So that's exactly what I've done over my career. And over the journey, I've met a lot of amazing people. If you take a look, there's some great photos there of some all different bits and gear, some good photos from some time I spent in Scotland, in the UK, obviously Japan there as well. And most recently, I was lucky enough to get across to the Caribbean, which is the home of rum, which is very important for my current role at the moment. We're looking at building a quite nice Australian rum distillery. Personally, for me as well, I'm also very passionate about knowledge sharing and encouraging research and development. So anything we can do to collaborate and grow the industry was an important thing that I believe in and want to be part of. And one great thing that I found about the distilling industry, not just in Australia but globally, is that everyone is quite open to help that and encourage that learning, and we can do a lot together. So by working together, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge from our different industries, we've kind of managed to be able to help grow the industry together, which is a quite important thing and something that I am a big believer in. All right, so my journey in chemical engineering right now. So touching on those last few slides, kind of give you a bit of a background of where I've been and kind of the experience that I've had. So my experience to date, some of the research work, the design engineering work that I've done, working in large manufacturing operations, then also the experience in small business and craft distilling, all that kind of culminated in me being the perfect fit for my current role now with Sydney Rum Distillery. So Sydney Rum Distillery is a greenfields project. That's quite an exciting role. The project started right from establishing the business case, doing the feasibility study, pre-engineering design, detailed design, and now moving into the final funding in construction. So for me, I'm employed as the head distiller there, but also a director in the company and a shareholder. So in that respect, I'm involved in entire aspects of the business, from governance issues to brand and marketing. But in terms of the engineering, that's my main core role. You'll see a couple of photos here on the slides that we can touch on in the middle. But one thing I would highlight is that snapshot in the middle of me is actually a little bit of a screenshot from a video from a round of capital raising. And I thought it's very important to touch on, and for you guys in general, no matter what industry that you're working in, it's really good to get an understanding of the bigger picture and the business implications, those insights, because that'll always very much help you achieve what you want to do and your personal ambitions. So I would highly recommend understanding the basis of business and honing some of these abilities, especially at the moment in my role. One of the biggest jobs that we need to do now is we've done all the great work, great design engineering, great concept, and we're moving into a final raise of capital raising and fundraising, which then will get us the funds to build this distillery and get cracking what we want to do. And with any industry, just like if you're working in research or you're doing design, it's all about working with open industry, and you've got to be able to communicate, talk, pitch, and get those funds in to get that to be able to do that good engineering that we all want to do. So any chance you get an industry to jump across and use some of your engineering skills in the business world, I'd definitely encourage it. And it's a great place, and you'll learn a lot through that as well. So my role at the company, as I mentioned, is quite varied, focusing mostly on the engineering aspects. The main parts at the moment are the detailed design engineering, so that's really, really cool, and some of the concept refinement that we're working on at the moment, implementing reasonably innovative state-of-the-art distillery, which has been quite a journey to get down. One of the biggest focus as well, which is and one of the most enjoyable parts about working in this company, is the R&D program. So as I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of research and development. We have a list of ambitions for the rum industry and some brilliant innovative ideas that are in the pipeline. And this has forged some great relationships with industry, from distillation experts, process control engineers, some of the work we're doing with cooperators, who are the guys who make your barrels that you age your rum in. But most importantly, we've got a very, very strong relationship with the University of New South Wales. So over in the corner, if you take a look, there's a nice little photo of a great group of students and Professor Julian Cox. If there's anyone here that's from the University of New South Wales, you'll be familiar with Julian. A great guy, and that's a great team all round, which is part of the VIP What's Brewing project. So, as I mentioned before, I'm lucky enough to be an adjunct lecturer with UNSW. So not only am I involved as SRD or City Run representative for our research projects that we're currently doing with the university, but also with this VIP program, there's a range of awesome kind of brewing, fermentation, food and beverage research that we're looking to get off the ground. So at the moment, a little bit slowed by the COVID situation, but with a lot of exciting R&D around brewing and distillation that we're keen to get off the ground very, very soon. Very much looking forward to that. All right, so let's take a look at where the industry is heading for the future. So I hope before we jump into this, a little bit of insights. I might have breezed through some of that a little bit quickly, but hope it was a bit insightful just to see kind of my journey and kind of what options are out there for you guys. But most importantly, I think it's make sure that you're flexible, open to change, and have a good sight on the goals that you want to achieve. But yeah, make the most of the opportunities as they are and the jobs that you have. Because everything I've done, every small job that I had, even pre-engineering or whilst I was in those roles in engineering roles, you always learn something great, and you'll take that and carry that skill into your next role. And it's that kind of combination of skills that then help you build your career. So always make the most out of every opportunity that you get. But right, this part. So I'd just like to start by saying, it may seem hard to stay positive in the current situation that we find ourselves in. We've got climate change, COVID-19, we've got a financial downturn coming our way. So if you forgive, everyone for feeling like this guy in the little cartoon, more than a little bit overwhelmed by the issues surrounding you. So when I tell you next that there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic about the future, it is the absolute opposite to being like this guy who's ignoring his house burning down at the moment. So when I say be positive, it's not about ignoring the issues around you. It's not about being blind or overwhelmed by them. What it's about accepting them, understanding them, dealing with them, and then most importantly, making the most of those opportunities that come your way. Because with any sort of crisis or downturn, there is always opportunities. There's always something you can do to innovate. People like to use the word pivot these days, especially in small business. There's always good opportunities there. So stay positive. Don't ignore what's happening around you, but know what the change is, know where the trends are, and make the most of it. So this is an important one. Chemical engineers, it's exactly what you're skilled to do at the moment. So there is overwhelmingly lots to be positive about, I believe, at the moment. Yes, we've got to be realistic. Some great slides from Alexandra around where the industries are heading and some of the decline in some of the current industries. So be prepared for that, but be aware of them and make sensible decisions. But in that, these challenges, they breed opportunity. And as I mentioned, it's exactly what we're designed to do as chemical engineers. Ultimately, your job, no matter what you do in industry, is to problem solve. So you're uniquely trained and suited to do this. And to be honest, the world's biggest problems right now, they need chemical engineers. And for me, it's very inspiring to be talking to you guys right now and knowing that some of you guys will be at the forefront of some of this amazing change. So it's great. Take a example, pertinent example right now. I think we would all very much be looking forward to the day when a COVID-19 vaccine is developed. Hopefully it's a bit sooner than currently forecast, but we'll see how that progresses. But once that vaccine is developed, there'll be chemical engineers all over the world, and very, very important to ensure the upscaling of that production and the successful delivery of that to the world. So, chemical engineers will be at the front of some of this change. And there's good opportunity there for you guys. So if we jump through and take a little bit of a look maybe at some of the trends we might see happening in the future. Let's have a look. If you think for the next 1 to 5 years, I think, to be honest, I don't think not much is going to change. Next 1 to 5 years, the core industries, they're always going to be vital and strong. I know it can seem like industries such as mining and energy are on the way out at the moment because of climate change, but it's not really the case. We still need resources and energy, but what we need even more is better, cleaner, more efficient ways to obtain them. Hence, there will not, only be ongoing roles of production of these vital resources that we need, but there's also opportunities, R&D, and also design upgrades, etc., to help facilitate this change. So, for the next 1 to 5 years, I think those core industries, they will stay strong, and there will be opportunities there for you guys. If you move a little bit forward into the next 5 to 10 years, forecasting out a little bit further, personally see big growth in some of the renewable energy and technology that's happening at the moment. The demand is growing, and so is the importance of that smart change. Now, it's not to spook anyone that's thinking of heading off into the oil and gas industry or currently doing petroleum engineering or something like that. Those are a big part of chemical engineering, and they will be still for a number of years. And right now, those industries are still vital for securing some of the energy needs that we need right now. But also, those roles in those industries are important for facilitating some of that change that is necessary to transfer over to some of the better technology and also use of other materials. So, and you also might find that if you're working in those industries now that are in a bit of a downturn or are on their way out, whether it might be a bigger manufacturing industry or something else, you'll find the skills that you learned there, you will then be able to transfer into another industry. For example, if you are working in, say, the oil and gas industry, you might find all that great experience that you've got or you will get over the next few years, you can then transfer into bioenergy, which I think is a great opportunity, in particular here for Australia, to produce some amazing products and some localised production. So with industry, stay across the industry and the trends, make sure you're upskilling and willing to adapt and change and be able to move as you need it. In the next 5 to 10 years, I also see a bit of a return to manufacturing. If you look at the trends, big manufacturing, it's definitely on the way down in Australia in particular, but I see this more in the realm of smart, kind of localised, smaller manufacturing. So essentially that's a focus on higher value goods in a smaller volume. It's more of a specialised manufacturing, not mass market appeal. This is particularly relevant to me and the experiences that I get in my industry at the moment. So the local food and beverage movement is huge, and more now than ever, people want to know where their food's sourced. They want to be able to get it locally. So having highly optimised and efficient plants that can deliver to a focused distribution network is a great opportunity. So I think you'll see a lot of these little avenues starting to pop up. Also, entrepreneurship. Any opportunity you think you'll see at the moment that you want to jump into, if you've got a great idea, I think you should grab it and you should be encouraged to do that. I see a big rise in startups and people getting out there and having a go themselves. It is easier more than ever now to start a company and capital raise, and you have so many opportunities to collaborate and interact with people globally. If you have a great idea, hook in with like-minded people, develop a business plan, take it to market and secure that investment, and then you can get going. It is obviously, timing-wise, it's a bit tough at the moment, fundraising, when we're going into a bit of a downturn, but if you've got a great idea and it's on trend with a growing market, have a go at it. So don't wait for someone else to do it for you. If you're a young engineer and you're motivated, you've got a great idea, don't think you need to wait to join a big company to do this. Feel free to seek out advice, go find people and get this opportunity off the ground. So whether you may do that as a side hustle that was mentioned previously, or you want to go all in and give it a crack, I think really good opportunity at the moment to meet great people, like-minded people, and get some really innovative businesses off the ground. And some of these challenges that we're facing actually breed that opportunity for you to go in there and excel and do something unique. So I'll always encourage that. The last little point there is globally, obviously it's different. So depending on where you are, not only globally, but even in Australia, if you're in the West Coast, the East Coast, your opportunity is always going to be different and the trend's going to be different as well. So in that aspect, I kind of stress the importance of being flexible. If there is a certain industry you want to work in, you can't expect that to line up with the ideal city or country you want to live in. So if there's something you specifically want to do, some sort of industry, be prepared to move and chase your dream. You may need to travel around the world to you follow that work as trends move. If for you personally, lifestyle is more important, or you have family commitments, then be prepared to change industries. So you can stay and find work in your chosen country, regardless of regardless of what your industry is currently now. You need to be adaptable if you want to secure that work. So basically what that meaning is, no matter where you find yourself, you want to be continuously learning and developing skills. You not only be able to afford to, you're not going to be able to sit back and just enjoy the career you want wherever you are in the world. You've got to get out there, you've got to kind of upskill, you've got to be a bit more adaptable this day and age. All right, so next slide. This is a bit of a closing slide. I'll just finish on a couple of little points for you guys. And basically, I think some of these little points, you've heard similar things before, I think, but it's important just to focus in and take a bit of time to reflect on some of these. So firstly, I think you always want to look to the future, but you really want to focus on the opportunity that's best for you right now. So basically what I mean by that is don't get caught up on potentially what your peers are doing. Do not be too concerned if you missed out on that, really great grad program you had your heart set on, or you can't crack into that industry that you've dreamed on. It's been a bit tougher than you might have thought. If you really want to get somewhere, you will get there. It'll take a lot of hard work. It'll take networking, but you'll get there if you really want it. My journey, for example, I really wanted to crack into the distilling industry. Food and beverage was something I was very much interested in, but it took me a few roles in other industries to actually gain the skills that then deserved me to be able to cross over into the industry that I really wanted to get into. So if you keep your mind at it, make sure that you will get there in the end, but it's very important to focus on the best opportunity that you have now. I've seen a lot of people in my work life that they can tend to, sometimes you get a bit disgruntled in the role that you've got now because it's not your dream job. So whether it's an engineering job, if it's something else, there's always something to learn. So give every job your best and you will continue to grow. And when you do that, you always find that you get a lot more satisfaction in your day. And trust me, from model work that I've done, even pre-engineering, side hustles, I've had events businesses and things like that I've done during my engineering career, there's always something you learn that are very valuable skills that you'll take into your next kind of role. So always give everything you're in at the moment. It's never just a job. Always give it your best. You learn lots more. You have a lot more fun. It's a good attitude to have. Now, at this point, not everyone needs to solve the world's problems, but I suppose we all will do our part in some small way. So the world needs creativity, fun, and enjoyment. Take me, for example, in the current roles that I do. Someone needs to make these delicious beverages for people to drink after a hard day of work, kind of solving climate change and upscaling vaccines for COVID-19, those kind of things. So don't feel the pressure to have to try and jump on some of these big world issues. There's, depending on your circumstances, your life, what you're doing, there is lots of value you can add in this world as a chemical engineer. Everyone's passions are different. So focus on what is best for you and where you can contribute the most, and you not only will have a really rewarding life, but you do well and you'll help contribute to the rest of society as well. So find that path and just stick to absolutely what is best for you. Definitely encourage you to embrace change and seek new opportunities. Some of you will change industries, definitely, 100% you'll change industries, not only different fields in chemical engineering, but some of you won't even work in chemical engineering, but this is not a big deal at all. The degree, I've always found, is always relevant. I find a lot of people saying some things you don't learn in engineering, you don't bring through to your life, but to be honest, a big part of learning chemical engineering you can apply to a whole range of different industries. And I've personally found that, and the reason why I've managed to do certain roles in my career are from that training and background I've had in ChemEd. So whether you find yourself working in a bit more business, finance, or you go start a small business, skills you've learned in ChemEd, 100% relevant, and you will be thankful that you have them. So just be open to opportunities and change, no matter where that takes you. The best opportunity for you at the time is the thing that you should be focused on. So final point, I think these two ones, which is network, collaborate, and share. So make sure, not stress the importance of networking, leveraging those connections, getting out there, meeting great people. The more you talk to great people, the more you get to meet and engage with like-minded, interesting people, the more opportunities that will come your way, and you have a lot of fun doing it as well. But most importantly, the final point just for me to end on for you guys is really enjoy the journey. So it's the most important part. Personal circumstances always change, but the skills you learn as a chem eng are always invaluable and relevant to any aspect of the journey you take in life. This degree literally is something that trains you to learn quickly, adapt and problem solve. It's all the tools you need to succeed, to find your passion and enjoy it. So in that note, I'd say thank you for letting me talk to you guys today, and encourage you to be positive and enjoy the rest of your futures. Good luck.
Thanks, Tim. So actually, on your networking point, I just want to remind everyone again that if they go into the public chat, they can see a link to our networking event. So you can get started on this and Tim's message right now. Tim, I think we do have enough time for one question. So
definitely. Yep.
So while our good folks start searching up that link, Tim, did you, this is from Gerardo Osniel. Sorry if I've butchered your name, Gerardo. Tim, did you use lean startup methodology to start your distillation business? And how do you think you can put in action one's chem eng knowledge into a business?
So break that down. Was that two questions in one?
Yes, it sort of was.
Lean methodology first, and then the next part was?
How do you think you can put in your chem eng knowledge into a business?
Yeah, so I think lean methodology, if in manufacturing, 100% important. Something that you'll come across, particularly in established manufacturing, but also you want to be aware of those principles before you start. So definitely something that we use, and in the business I'm in now, designing a manufacturing facility, there's some principles that we're looking to incorporate. And it's important to get with the new business to get those kind of frameworks down at the start. In terms of chemical engineering principles for distillation, I think the simplest way to put it, 100% industry that I'm in now, it's all very much about the chemical engineering process. For me, a big part of chemical engineering is always you're turning those kind of raw ingredients into valuable end products. So working in the mining industry, we're taking rocks, we're turning them into gold bars, fantastic. But for me, ultimately, the most rewarding thing in the distilling industry is you get to take things like grains, so wheat and barley, and then you get to turn them into fantastic whiskies. Or you take molasses and you turn them into beautiful high-end premium Australian rums, which can then be shared with people around the world. So definitely much a similar principle, and all those little bits in between to get there is exactly the same as well. But for me, a lot more enjoyable end product making a nice bottle of whiskey than it is a gold bar.
Awesome. Thank you for your answer, and thank you for joining us today. Not all the other speakers are here, but thank you to everyone who's taken part in this summit. We've all hope you've gained like something out of it at the very least. And once again, last reminder, we do have a networking event that will start in about 15 minutes, which should be enough time to register. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Tim, so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.